GYP.
Wow, what does that mean?
I'll be honest, I don't think anyone knows what it means anymore.
That means I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
Hey everyone, it's part 2 of the GYP Sports NFC preview for the upcoming 2014-2015 season. In part 1, Phil and I were looking at the NFC East and the NFC North. Now we're going to take a look at the NFC South and the NFC West. Well, one of the reasons I was down on the NFC North is that they play the NFC South this year. Like we said, they do play the AFC East, but the NFC South is the rest of their full division that they play. Mm-hmm. And I'm very big on the NFC South. The team projected to be at the top of the NFC South. Any guess on who that is?
My guess would be the Saints.
The Saints are at 10.
10? That's a tough division for 10. But, I mean, I guess when you're... 10's fair.
Maybe destined to push. A lot of people really big on the Saints this year. I think maybe the biggest thing about their offseason was the whole Jimmy Graham thing. That's what we kept hearing. Was he going to get paid like a wide receiver or a tight end? Mm-hmm. I know I felt he should have gotten more as more like a wide receiver. That's a position he's basically been playing for them.
Right. I mean, he lines up in the slot. I mean, people compare him to like Robert Gronkowski, but Gronk plays tight end. He plays at the end of the line all the time. Like, he is a huge contributor in the run game. Jimmy Graham is a pass catcher. Mm-hmm. He's not really doing anything as far as blocking or anything like that for your team.
They also add, in terms of the draft, they add another wide receiver, Kenny Stills.
Kenny Stills?
Right, Kenny Stills. I'm sorry, Brandon Cooks.
It was Cooks, yeah.
Stills was last year. Brandon Cooks, I apologize.
Cooks. I've heard nothing but awesome things about Cooks.
Right, it should be good. Marquez Colston on the other side, Jimmy Graham.
Jarius Byrd.
Getting onto the defense too, Jarius Byrd. I love that addition. Jarius Byrd basically replacing Roman Harper.
One of the best safeties. I mean,
probably, we've seen him firsthand.
Top 5 safety in the league, I think.
They add defensive end Brandon Diedrich, replaces Will Smith, who went to the Patriots. So mostly replacing some slightly older guys with some slightly younger guys. The one exception being that they do have Champ Bailey now.
And, I mean, corner depth is never a bad thing. And Bailey can still provide that. I
know we made the joke last time with how terrible would it be for Champ Bailey if he spent all those years with Denver and then they wouldn't win until after he left.
Until he leaves, yeah.
But now he's on the Saints, a team that a lot of people think can really make a run at the Super Bowl here. A lot of people think they think they're right on the cusp. I mean, it's a defense that has they had a drop off last year. They when they were good, they were great.
Right. And again, that offense is just going to run like clockwork, and you kind of just know it. Mm-hmm. So the only question of how far can this team go is how far will this defense let them go? And I think they've put the pieces in place to, really to get past that point where they're limited by their defense. I think they can get all the way if, they can be consistent and perform.
They have on the depth chart right now Champ Bailey listed as a starting cornerback, and on the other side they have Keenan Lewis. That's a little red flag to me, but talk about a great safety pairing, Jarius Byrd and Kenny Vaccaro.
Yeah, I mean, that's... Again, I've always really liked Byrd, and I don't know much about Vaccaro, but I've heard that he's really good.
Oh yeah, he's as good as it gets at safety right now. That's what it comes down to. I mean not Troy Polamalu, what Troy Polamalu was a couple years ago, or Ed Reed a couple years ago, but right now, in terms of hard-hitting safeties.
Yeah, he's right there.
He's just probably behind...
Cam Chancellor, maybe.
Well, yep, Cam Chancellor and the other gentleman for Seattle.
Thomas. Earl Thomas.
Earl Thomas, that's it. Earl Thomas.
I knew it was an E.
They also have a very good emerging pass rusher in Cameron Jordan. He's got one of those names that's destined to confuse everyone, Cameron Jordan, because you also have Jordan Cameron, the tight end, who emerged last year for the Cleveland Browns. But 10 is the number right there. Do you think they're over or under that?
I'm going to go over.
Okay. I called you out before for pushing and saying, it was a wimpy move. And I'm just going to be a hypocrite right now, and I'm going to push.
You're pushing.
Yeah. I really like this division. but it's a tough division to, I think, really come out with a dominant
to get
record.
that many wins. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, and again, we'll talk more about the division. Obviously, let's just keep going.
Yeah. So, which team do you think is next in terms of where Vegas sees them?
As far as where Vegas sees them,
Yeah.
I think it's Atlanta.
Okay, you're right. I was actually surprised to see this.
See, I
Atlanta had a
personally-
terrible year last year.
Yeah, but I honestly think Atlanta will be second in the division.
Now, Atlanta went 4-12 last year. Their over/under is 8.5.
Oh, they're over that.
Okay, so you're really big on Atlanta.
All right, Atlanta, I think is gonna, I think that last wild card spot will be between Atlanta and Chicago, and I think Atlanta could win that game.
Atlanta doesn't lose much, and they do add a lot of little pieces here and there. They add some help on their defensive line, Tyson Jackson. They had some help on their offensive line, Gabe Karimi. Javier Arenas at cornerback, coming from Arizona. They had Devin Hester, one of the sort of quiet signings. I guess he's a wide receiver, but I imagine he'll be doing some kick returning for them.
And he can he's not going to single-handedly win you any games, but he can be a spark plug to a lot of wins.
Right, and this has never been a team that we thought had a lack of talent. I mean, a lot of people had them winning the Super Bowl last year, and everything fell apart. Injuries got the best of them.
Everything went wrong, and that's not going to happen this year.
Right, Roddy White was hurt for a lot of the beginning of the year, and then once he started to get healthy, Jones is out.
Jones is gone, and even so, Roddy White wasn't fully healthy the entire year.
Now, their starting running back is still Steven Jackson. Now, that's got to be a problem.
Well, I don't know. It's so weird because Jackson was so reliable.
It's just you hit that wall. You get to a certain age and there's nothing.
I think he hit it so hard, though. I think harder than anybody I can ever remember as far as
it's
not
a great microcosm. It's a great microcosm for his career.
Yeah, there's plenty of fluke guys that have 2 or 3 insane years and then just fall off the face of the earth. He was just consistent though for an extended period of time and then stopped. He didn't slowly decline. He just stopped last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think last year was a fluke. I don't think he's going to be back up to where he was in St. Louis, but I think he's going to be somewhere in between. And I think they're more prepared to, have another guy kind of carry the load there.
Mm-hmm.
I think because last year he was kind of expected to be the guy and, take 80% of the carries.
I think their running back depth does make you kind of go, meh. They got Devonta Freeman, Jacquizz Rodgers, and Antone Smith.
I like Jacquizz Rodgers, and I think going into the season thinking, he'll have maybe a bigger role, or just everyone, going in thinking they'll have a bigger role, I think will help. Because I don't think there's as much pressure is on Steven Jackson to be better than last year. He doesn't have the pressure, I think, of just being the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, splitting carries, just like, I think we talked about in Oakland, MJD and Darren McFadden, how I don't think we want either of them being the guy right now because of health issues, but I think splitting carries is going to help both of them. I think splitting carries with, the rest of the running backs they got there is going to help Jackson, and I think being prepared for that, he'll be better.
I think the Atlanta Falcons want to be the New Orleans Saints in a lot of ways. They want to have that great passing attack, spread the ball around, have great weapons to throw to. Not as concerned about the running game. Even though Steven Jackson is not really the type of running back that fits best in a system like that.
Right.
It's just a matter of finding playmakers on defense. Now, they're in the 3-4 defense now. They do have some big bodies up there. Talk about big bodies. Tyson Jackson, Paul Soliai, and Jonathan Babineau are your offensive linemen. Those are 3 guys that could play defensive tackle.
Guys. Yeah.
And you got some playmakers on the outside. The pass rushers, Croy Bierman and Osi Yermanura. See if they can kind of take that step to make some more plays. Mm-hmm. But after that, a lot of real big question marks. Their starting cornerbacks are Alford and Trufant. Their starting safeties are William Moore and Dwight Lowry. It's one of those teams that's what really concerns me most about them in terms of reaching that next level.
Mm-hmm.
It's their over under is 8.5. I'm gonna go just under at 8.
I'm going over. I think they'll be 9 or 10. I'd be shocked if they were under 500.
Right, and I think a lot of it's Julio Jones is that good.
Julio is that good, and I think, a healthy Roddy White, I think they are a top 3 tandem in the league. So, again, just them being healthy. And we haven't even talked about Tony Gonzalez leaving, though.
Well, yeah, going straight into to Dan Marino seat in CBS.
Yeah.
That hurts a little.
Yeah, no, I know. I could tell in your voice.
Yeah, no, I was a big Marino fan as a kid, just to basically spite the Patriots until Marino retired, and then I really couldn't get on the Jay Fiedler bandwagon.
I don't think anybody could. So.
No, it's a lot easier to get on.
Don't beat yourself up over that.
It's a lot easier to cheer for Dan Marino than get on the Jay Fiedler, Damon Heward bandwagon. Ugh. I don't think there even was a bandwagon.
It was just, their families waving goodbye to them as they walked with a suitcase.
Yeah, probably the only ones that would fix their Wikipedia page would be the families and just say amazing, wonderful things about them.
No, you can totally see Jay Fiedler right now just typing stuff on his Wikipedia page.
He went to Dartmouth?
All his high school and academic accolades.
Yeah, no, that's why we don't have enough in the NFL, those Ivy League quarterbacks. Well, it's not 1942 anymore.
Yeah, and think of, we got a Harvard guy who hasn't been too hot.
So, next team in the division. Yeah, so Ryan Fitzpatrick, of course, you're teasing about that right there.
Right.
We've already definitely delved into him and his leadership for the Houston Texans this year. It could be such a great team if he wasn't their quarterback. But next team in the division, and this is the team, I don't think it's any surprise here. The next team listed is at 8 wins over and under the Carolina Panthers. I think the only surprise is that they're that low. This was a team that was great last year, but it's a team that ran into some salary cap issues. They were able to maintain a few key guys, but they have a lot of...
They lost a lot.
Yes, and they keep in mind the biggest guy that maybe they retained, they just franchised him. Thank God they didn't sign him to a long-term deal. Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy, there's a storm coming for Greg Hardy.
There's a storm coming.
Yeah, do you know exactly? I'm hoping to write on this someday soon. Write an article about this because have you heard what happened with that whole domestic issue with him?
Not at depth, no.
Okay, just to give you the most brief synopsis I can, the allegations were that he I don't know if it was an ex at a time or they had been dating. I don't know if they were dating anymore, but she was over, and he grabbed her hair and pulled her into the next room, threw her on a futon that was covered in guns, covered in guns, which is just one of those things that you picture it for a sec and you can't imagine that. Oh, it's my futon.
He didn't have blankets. He had guns.
Yeah, futon covered in guns. Then grabbed her by the neck, ripped off I guess a necklace he gave her, threw it in the toilet. When she went to try and save it from getting flushed down the toilet, he slammed the lid on her arms.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this is horrific stuff. And then, grabbed her by the neck and pulled her out of the bathroom, and then called the cops on her, all the while taunting her, you're going to jail, bitch, you're going to jail. It's, oh, my God, it's just the most horrific thing. So, Greg Hardy, he had a pretty good year last year. And,
guy's a monster.
Yeah, call him the Kraken. Guess he was cracking skulls in the offseason. That is completely off-color joke.
And toilet seats.
Well, yes. Oh, it's horrific what he did. I hope he gets more than 2 games. I'll tell you that. We'll see what the law does to him too. It looks like he was found guilty. He's in appeals right now. That's a completely different story. But they might not have him for a good portion of the year. Is the main point. So even though they do retain him.
And they also lose Captain Munnerlyn, who was huge last year.
As well as Mike Mitchell, free safety.
Then on offense, they go and replace Steve Smith and Brandon LaFell with Ted Ginn and a myriad of mediocre guys, Hickson, Underwood.
Their number one receiver, Cotchery right now. Their number one receiver right now is their draft pick, Kelvin Benjamin. And that, I think, says a lot because you look at every other team in the draft picks, they're 3rd, 4th down on the depth chart in terms of wide receiver. Kelvin Benjamin immediately becomes the guy. Yeah. And he was a guy who had a lot of question marks with him anyway. I mean, their best wide receiver might be Greg Olsen at tight end. It's a team that...
He's going to lead that team, I think, in catches, yeah. As far as
It baffles me. It baffles me what this team did. They wrapped up so much cash in the running back position between D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, and neither of them panned out.
Just crippling them completely.
Yeah, I mean, they have a pretty good offensive line. The best player is their center, Khalil, Ryan Khalil. But just Cam Newton is given nothing here. And
and I mean, it's too bad because he was really starting to come into his own and develop as a quarterback, and now that's just going to be hindered because he's going to have nobody around him.
And with that said, I still would. You put the Panthers in the NFC East. I think they win the division.
I think they win that division.
A really solid defense still, even if you take away Greg Hardy for a couple games, take away the pieces that we mentioned. They still got Charles Johnson on the defensive line. They got a guy that I love. He was a rookie last year, Star Latule, out of Utah, defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, he dropped because of the health problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if he can stay healthy, he's great. And then linebackers, they got Luke Kuechly and Tommy Davis. Davis.
Yeah, huge. Luke Kuechly, I mean, already in his young career, arguably, top 2 or 3 middle linebackers in the entire league.
I think he looked a little inflated last year in terms of just his performance. I expect him to drop a little bit this year. I think a lot of people are pointing out flaws in his game that are concerning. But their secondary definitely took a big hit there. I mean, Antoine Case and Melvin White, those are their cornerbacks. They have Roman Harper, who I believe is 86 years old, playing strong safety.
I don't know how he's still in the league.
His hair has been white for 7 years.
They will roll him out.
They had to, part of his contract deal was one of those scooters that you see in the commercial for the old people, the one that plays the song "I Wanna Get Around Town Now," which is the funniest thing in the world to me.
Yeah, I mean, he gets special things in the locker room with his AARP card.
Mm-hmm. But their team, their biggest thing last year was their defense. They lose some defensive pieces, but they still seem to have a decent defense at the very least, but it doesn't seem to be a top 5 defense anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think they won 12 games last year. They're not going to come anywhere near that this year.
I mean, their games, hopefully they're going to be able to control the ball with probably Cam Newton not asked to do too much, and they can run, even with Cam Newton sometimes, and then just let their defense just make plays here and there, and they can sneak out some wins. But their over-under is 8.
Yeah, I'm going under.
A lot under. I'm going under 2. I'm going 7 and 9.
Yeah, I think 6 or 7 is safe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean that's a huge drop from last year. This team was
12
great.
To 12 to 6 or 7. I mean, think they lost so much.
Are we overlooking the Panthers at all? It seems like everyone, Vegas is down on them, and this was a team that still won 12 games last year, and it shakes me to the core.
Well, I mean, but the thing about last year, they also overachieved, I think. No one thought they were going to be that good, I mean, I remember early in the season, it was week 2, they played the Seahawks to a 10-9 game.
Yeah, that's weird.
I remember watching that game, and it was so boring.
Oh, yeah.
I hated every minute.
And it was in Seattle, I believe. Yeah. It was just whoa. Oh, it looks like one of those strange games. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, the Panthers end up only losing 3 other games all season.
And I think last year was an anomaly. So even if they didn't lose a lot of people, I really think 12 games would be an absolute stretch. I think they'd really be more like 10 with the same roster as last year. Mm-hmm. And then when you take into account all the things they lost, not a chance. I mean, this team just won't be as good. And I would be really surprised if they were above 500.
Now, the next team in the NFC South is the team that brand new uniforms this year. That's always a good sign.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their sort of alarm clock numbers going on.
I can't stand those.
I like them. I don't know. I'm a fan. But I think that's probably going to be a microcosm for how we feel about these teams, because I don't think you're going to be big on them, and I am very big on them.
Yeah, I'm very small on them.
They're over under 7.
That's so high.
They finished 4-12 last year. I mean, it's not as high as what the Falcons were. I mean, they were 4-12 too, and they were all the way at 8.5. Now, let me make my case. I feel like I'm defending the Raiders like I did last time. You're just shaking your head what is wrong with you? Okay, So we know they lose Darrelle Revis. They replace him with Altron Werner, Tennessee Titans cornerback, now Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They also get Michael Johnson at defensive end. They get a good center and Evan Dietrich Smith from the Packers. They get a very competent quarterback based on how he played last year, Josh McCown.
I love how you put very confident, and you said it
very
like
competent.
Yeah, competent. No, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, maybe he's confident too.
But like that's his ceiling.
Yeah, no.
His absolute ceiling can keep you in games.
No, in the same way that I said it would be great for the Cowboys if they lost a lot of games this year. This is the Buccaneers. It's probably not great if they have a winning season. They still need to add more pieces. I mean, Josh McCown's not your long-term plan.
Not at all. No,
he's like maybe 3 more years. And I mean, Mike Glennon is their backup. He had some time last year, but it definitely looks like it's McCown's team.
Yeah.
And this was a team where last year Doug Martin, who had a great first year, just really underperformed last year. My favorite nickname in all of football, the Muscle Hamster. He hates it too, by the way.
I think Martin coming back, I don't think he'll be the same Doug Martin he was his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I think he'll be solid. But I still don't think he will make up for, not having possibly competent quarterback.
I think that competent quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a Pro Bowler this year.
That is the craziest thing I've heard in
They
long
have.
time.
Look at this. Look at these pieces he has. I wish I had these guys to throw to. Vincent Jackson and new draft pick Mike Evans are your top 2 wide receivers.
Okay.
They have some other little pieces in there. Eric Page, Louis Murphy, Sky Dawson. They're not game changers necessarily. But Vincent Jackson, Mike Evans, both of them are. I think Mike Evans is 6'4", Vincent Jackson is 6'5". They're enormous. Mm-hmm. You have Brandon Myers at your tight end. He's had a lot of big plays. He's one of those wide receiver type tight ends. He can go out and make some plays. Great catcher.
Right.
By the way, deep into their tight end bullpen, they have Tom Crabtree and Luke Stalker. And I just know from Madden video games, those guys, good run blockers. I've had those guys on my team run blocking. But anyway, they also get Austin Safar Jenkins, who is a enormous athletic freak at tight end. This is a team that's going to have great pieces to throw to, but
it doesn't matter if there's no one throwing it to him.
Josh McCown had a great year last year.
All right, no, okay, but I'm looking at Josh McCown's career. He's not a young kid. He's 35.
No. He was coaching high school when they signed him.
I know. And the last time he went, I don't know about the last time he went into the year as a starter. Mm-hmm. But he started 14 games for the Cardinals back in 2004.
Okay.
In which
2004.
No, but regardless, this was him as a starter. He went through a stretch: 8 games in 2003, 14 in 2004, 9 in 2005, 9 in 2007. That's a legitimate sample size to take from a backup quarterback.
Okay.
All right, and in 2004, where he started 14 games, he had 11 touchdowns. You know what else he also had 11 of? His fumbles. Oh my! Yeah. And 10 interceptions.
I was just gonna say it wasn't gonna be interceptions. So you're gonna throw a curveball at me.
Since they started doing ESPN's QBR in 2007, last year it was 85.1, outstanding. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But before that, 27.5, 11.1, 0.7, 30.8. He's got a sample size. Yes. I just think last year was.
You know what? They're making Kool-Aid.
He had Marshall and Jeffrey to throw to last year.
Yeah, and he's got Evans and Jackson to throw to this year.
You're going to compare Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey.
Yes.
That is just absolutely insane to me.
I love big physical wide receivers, guys that won't get pushed around.
I mean, as far as I think Vincent Jackson is overrated.
I'm not saying this offense is a top 5 offense. It might not even be a top 10 offense in the NFL. It's a top half offense, I'll tell you that. And their defense is what really makes for them. Now they get Lovie Smith coming in, so defensive-minded coach.
Right.
You're going to need your offense to just manage the game. If Doug Martin
who's going to tell Josh McCown what to do?
I think Josh McCown. Okay, they're making Kool-Aid down in Tampa Bay, and I am drinking it fierce. I am chugging that stuff.
I'm dumping it out without even tasting it.
Yeah, no, I just give it to me. I've heard in all sorts of interviews, Josh McCown's come in and completely changed the culture. He's just he's like that guy who will be a future coach. Just a great head on his shoulders, and if he doesn't need to be, Drew Brees. He doesn't,
but he's got to be above average to take that offense anywhere.
I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm saying they're going to win the division, though.
All right,
this is a division
let's move on.
We haven't even touched upon their defense. Let me just say, look at this defense.
I like Levante David. I think their D-line
one of the best
with
Adrian
McCoy and Claiborne is great.
Michael Johnson coming in too.
Michael Johnson's huge.
I'm getting really loud and excited.
and I love Levante David. And I love their defense. Their safety tandem with Goldson and Barron.
Yes.
I think Burner's solid. But, I mean, they don't have a lot of depth at linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Nor in the secondary. I love, three of their starters.
Do you know who they added linebacker? Dane Fletcher. Special teams hero.
Yeah. Special teams hero for the Patriots is now going to be getting a lot of snaps on defense.
Yeah, he got a lot of snaps in defense for the Patriots.
They were depleted in linebacker last year.
Yeah. But no, I do think adding a guy like that helps your special teams out too. That's a big component of.
But I mean, I think I like a lot of people on their defense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be a top 5 defense. I think it'll be a top 10 defense. But I just don't think that offense is going to do enough.
Yeah, well, I just think
I don't think that defense is good enough to match with Atlanta's offense or New Orleans' offense.
Sure, I think if Doug Martin can be somewhere in between what he was last year and what he was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that's huge for them. I think if these physical wide receivers are able to help McCown throw for just have a like a Nick Foles type season. I don't mean like as good as Nick Foles was last year because he obviously had a great touchdown interception rate. But just a lot of touchdowns, not a lot of picks. So, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, season like that. I think this team wins the division. They're 7 for over-under. Like I said, I had the Saints at 10. I think the Buccaneers win 11 games.
Well, I will just say, if Martin, I don't think really either of us think he's going to be any better than he was his rookie year, right? Because he was outstanding.
No, there was too much of a drop-off last year. It was really red flaggy.
That team still won. That team only won 7 games.
Yeah, their quarterback was Josh Freeman.
Yeah, and you think Josh Freeman is really that much worse than Josh McCown?
Yeah. I think Josh Freeman was he wasn't a leader. He didn't have the right kind of head on his shoulders.
Yeah, well, Josh McCown doesn't have the right kind of arm on his shoulder.
Okay. I'm glad there's this first part that we could argue about, and I know there's an argument coming in the NFC West too. This has already been much longer than the AFC version. Yeah. It's just a much better conference. But the NFC West, any surprise in terms of the top there? I guess not. Seattle is the team that's projected to get the most wins in that division.
I think the Niners I actually think the Niners will win that division this year, but I think Seattle will be right there. I think they could have the same record and just Niners get a tiebreaker or something.
I think one of those two teams doesn't make the playoffs, but I think it's dependent on an injury, so it's hard for me to really predict.
Mm-hmm.
They lose Golden Tate. They lose Clinton McDonald.
See, again, that Tate thing means absolutely nothing to me.
That's fine. They don't have Sidney Rice either, and they have Percy Harvin, who's damaged goods.
Well,
so not a lot of guys to throw to.
Sidney Rice, I was high on for a while, but he's really been irrelevant. You know who I like though for Seattle is drawing a blank right now. Doug Baldwin. Love Doug Baldwin.
Okay. Yeah, no, I feel like you liking Doug Baldwin. I mean, he's their. If Harvin gets hurt, he's all of a sudden their number one option. Because after that, they have.
Which again, they're in trouble if that happens.
They have Jermaine. Don't call me Javon Curse.
Right, and this is part of the reason why I think the Niners will win that division.
They have a lot of question marks at offensive line, too. I mean, Russell Okung, Max Unger might be the solid pieces there, but they get a lot of question marks. Eric Winston. And then their guards are James Carpenter has been such a disappointment. He was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And J.R. Sweezy. And it just sounds
Dude, I love J.R. Sweezy. No, only because I remember when Me and Tyler one time we were going through like rookie prospects, and we were just scrolling through the list, and we saw J.R. Sweezy, and I forget he wasn't like a lineman, or he wasn't an offensive lineman. I think he was a defensive lineman in college or something. And we just saw his name, and I put a draft alert in for him instantly. And then he got drafted. Actually, apparently he was actually pretty decent last year.
Yeah, no, okay, so they had so many issues on their offensive line. I mean, offensive line obviously isn't where the excitement is. Just go through again. They did retain Doug Baldwin. He was a restricted free agent, so it's not hard to retain him. And they retained Michael Bennett, who was one of their main stars on the defensive line. But they lost a lot of stuff on the defensive line, too. They lose Clinton McDonald. They lose Red Bryant. They lose Chris Clemens.
I think Clemens is a huge loss.
They replace. They don't have Browner, who basically didn't play last year. They replaced Walter Thurman at cornerback with Phillip Adams. Maybe that's a push. Like I said, they lose Golden Tate. They lose Kellen Davis, more of that blocking tight end type. I mean, a lot of pieces coming out of that defense. Just it's really a depth thing because their defense is still amazing. Yeah,
their defense is great. I mean, they still got Sherman, Chancellor, Thomas.
Yeah, Sherman, Chancellor, Thomas, and Byron Maxwell, who's another great quarterback.
These guys can play. They were just great last year. And Bobby Wagner is huge.
Right. Well, their defensive line, I think, would be the next thing to point out between Michael Bennett, Tony McDaniel, Brandon Mebane, and Cliff Averill. It's another great defensive line. Their linebackers might be their weak point, even though Wagner stood up and did pretty well. Their other side, KJ Wright and Bruce Irvin, who was the defensive end out of West Virginia, sort of the
he's one of those weird. He's such a hybrid. They don't know where to put him.
He's more of a pass rusher, and they're a team that I think they would want to hope that they can put pressure on the quarterback with that front four, and they wouldn't need a blitz package. And I don't know if Bruce Irvin's he's not Patrick Willis or Navarro Bowman. He's not going to be great in coverage.
No,
but their over/under is 11. Which is such a painful over and under to look at, because if you say under, you're saying the Super Bowl champions that still have an amazing defense
are going to win 10 games.
Are only going to win 10 games. But if you
go over, it's like, wow, that's anytime you're expecting 12 games out of someone, it's really a stretch. But I'm copping out. I'm pushing.
Okay, I'm going to go under. I'll go 10-6. We're going to be agreeing on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sure as the eventual winners of this division. But the Seattle Seahawks, I just wanted to pick one over-under. I think they could just as well push. But it's one of those things that there's always a team that slumps after the Super Bowl. The Ravens didn't even make it last year.
It's not all just about every team that.
Right, and I don't think the Broncos are going to slump, so I think you can make a better case that the Seahawks will.
Yeah.
Because the Broncos, can we agree that our argument was that there was a lot of turnover, but the Broncos got better in the offseason.
Yeah, and I just watched Peyton's, 2 drives against the Niners earlier. Their preseason game started at 4. It's just unreal.
Good.
Yeah,
he's very good.
He's really very good.
Can you remember a couple of years ago they were like, "Oh, that neck injury, was he ever going to be able to come back?"
He's back and as good as ever.
I would have loved to see just a couple of years ago. Would have loved to see how many people thought Peyton Manning would come back and lead a team to a Super Bowl versus how many people thought Tiger Woods would win a major.
Both those guys it would have been. It would have been Woods, I think, very favorably.
I would love to go talk to myself from 5 years ago and just tell me all this stuff just to blow my mind.
By the way, yeah.
But so the San Francisco 49ers are the next team listed in the division. Obviously, no surprise there either. Their over/under is 10.5, so just a smidge under the Seattle Seahawks. They lose Dante Whitner. They replace him with Antoine Bethea.
I'll take that if I'm San Fran.
Yeah, more of a coverage safety, not corner.
Yeah, but you got enough physical guys on your defense where, if you replace one kind of cover guy or one physical guy with a cover guy, you're not going to lose too much.
But while the strength for the Seahawks is their defensive backs, the Niners get really depleted there. They lose Carlos Rogers. They lose Terrell Brown. Obviously, like I said, they lose Whitner. They replace him with Bethea. Definitely a lot of issues there. Obviously their strength is still in their linebackers. When's Navarro Bowman coming back, though? When is Aldon Smith going to be able to, I don't know, just not get into trouble?
So, yeah, actually play, because he's probably going to miss some time, too, from suspension. I'm thinking, honestly, they might not get Bowman back. I think the consensus right now is about half the year. And it could be the same for Aldon Smith.
Right. I mean, Patrick Willis and Ahmad Brooks still there.
If they can stay in it, though, Willis and Brooks, if they can, if they can go into Week 8 at 5-3, then they could, still finish the season at, 12-4 or 11-5, because those guys are that good, and just having them come into your team halfway through the season could be huge.
I mean, I have a lot of faith. Their defense looks a lot more depleted, but I have a lot of faith in the 49ers front office, which seems to consistently find that next piece to fit in.
Right. They seem to have that next guy up mentality too, and it's been working.
But what I'm really excited about is their offense. Colin Kaepernick just signed that deal. It wasn't a huge money deal too, and it really helped out the 49ers. It allowed a lot of flexibility.
Well, I think it was a pretty big money deal, but not a lot of it guaranteed.
Right.
Or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I heard it's a very club-friendly deal.
Yeah.
It's a club-friendly deal.
Right. So they retained Vernon Davis, too, which I think was they needed to do that.
He's probably, outside Kaepernick, probably the most important guy on that offense.
I don't know. I like Michael Crabtree. I think Michael Crabtree is ready to be the number one on that team.
I think he's a mediocre receiver.
Michael Crabtree has got to be playing with such a chip on his shoulder this year. He got bitched out by Sherman after the playoffs.
I agree with Sherman. I never thought Crabtree was that great.
Well, he's gonna want to prove it now. But they got Anquan Bolden on the other end. They add Stevie Johnson. I love Stevie Johnson. I loved him in Buffalo. Never had anyone to throw him to.
Never did. So I think again he could be easily as good, if not better, than Crabtree.
And they still have an amazing offensive line: Joe Staley, Mike Iupati, and Davis on the right tackle. So.
According to one of my friends who's a San Francisco fan, their depth at running back is unreal.
Right. I wanted to get to that last because their draft pick this year was Carlos Hyde.
He loves Hyde. I mean, I think Lattimore could be a solid running back in the league.
LaMichael James, and we didn't even mention the starter, Frank Gore.
And Frank Gore, who's been the most consistent back in the league over the last 8 years.
He's been hitting that wall really. He has his moments where he shows up, but I've seen a lot of 49ers football, and it's happening. He's falling off that cliff.
But the thing, they got guys in the wings right now, ready. They're prepared for that wall to hit,
And I think the 49ers are just going to be that team that plays with a chip on the shoulder this year because they've been so close every time.
That was 3 straight NFC championships, right?
Yeah, and now their division rivals are coming back with the Lombardi Trophy.
Yep.
I mean, Kaepernick.
I like San Fran. I think they'll win that division.
I mean, their over-under is 10.5. I don't think they go too much over. I think it's 11 or 12.
11, 12. Again, I think they'll be right around the same spot as Seattle.
But both of them are division. I'm sorry, both of them are playoff bound.
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah. So next, we have Arizona and St. Louis. They're both the same over/under win total, and I think maybe the best way to do this because I think we already know where we're going on this. You're very big on Arizona.
Huge.
I'm very big on St. Louis.
Yeah, I love Arizona, man. They won 10 games last year, and no one even cares.
No one cares at all.
Nobody cares at all. All of a sudden, Carson Palmer just started being old school Bengals Carson Palmer, and nobody gave a shit.
So their offensive line's been their biggest problem over the years. They do add Jared Veldier from Oakland. That's a really solid addition. But they lose some depth on their defense. They lose Carlos Dansby. They lose Antoine Cason. They lose Javier Arenas. Both of those last two being cornerbacks.
Dansby, I think, is getting past his prime. He's not as good as he was.
I mean, I would certainly agree. So they added Ted Ginn. You said Ted Ginn was still on the Panthers before. He's on the Cardinals now.
My bad.
World shaker there.
Yeah, huge.
But
just makes Carolina that much worse.
He was a top 10 draft pick. Let's just remember that and just dwell on that for a second. Great job by the Dolphins there. And they also lose Darrell Washington, their linebacker, not to free agency, but to a year-long suspension. Mm-hmm. He was probably their best, arguably. I think a lot of Calais
Campbell. Darnell Dockett's no joke.
Yeah, I think it's between Washington and Campbell, and then you have Peterson there, too, who just got his big money deal.
I mean, they you got Cromartie. They had Rogers Cromartie a few years ago. Now they got just Cromartie, his lesser half. Mm-hmm. And, dude, I love the Honey Badger.
No, Tyrann Mathieu coming off of injury, so let's see if he can...
I know, but I think I wanted the Patriots to get him so badly. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that, prior to his injury, he was having a hell of a year. Mm-hmm. Both returning and, people had question marks if he could actually play safety in the NFL, and he was doing it fine.
So they add Antonio Cromartie, too. He'll be the cornerback on the opposite end of Patrick Peterson, which, for what you're paying for him, it's not a bad hire.
Right. And John Abraham was like a Pro Bowler last year, wasn't he?
Right. John Abraham, I heard an interesting stat the other day that John Abraham has had more 10-sack seasons than everyone in NFL history except for 4 guys. And I believe the 4 were Bruce Smith, Reggie White, Kevin Green, and John Randall.
So that's a pretty quiet all-time great that we've been looking at.
Yeah, and he'll be on one of the ends in terms of linebackers. He'll be one of the outside linebackers.
Which will be new to him, right? Because he's traditionally been more of an end.
Yeah, I think they've sort of been transitioning him.
I know, like in Atlanta, in New York, he was an end.
Well, on the other side is going to be another guy who's traditionally been an end, Matt Shaughnessy from Oakland. So he'll be their other linebacker, and they will be behind Calais Campbell and Darnell Dockett, respectively. Those are the 2 defensive ends. They got a pretty good nose tackle, too, in Dan Williams. Big guy.
Right. I mean, again, their defense it's no joke. It's a good defense.
I think their defense is good. I'll be making a lot of arguments in a moment why I think the Rams' defense is so much better. Because I think what this defense does is stops the run. Mm-hmm. And they're just dependent on John Abraham to pressure the quarterback sometimes, but I don't have a lot of faith that he can still do that.
Well, I mean, you're sitting there saying they just stopped the run, but they have arguably one of the better cornerbacks in the league with Peterson.
Right. Well, no, I know that. I know they got Peterson and they got Cromartie. Peterson's a playmaker. I don't know if I wouldn't categorize him as elite in terms of coverage anymore. I think he makes some interceptions. He does some kick returns. He's going to stop doing that this year.
He's young.
Right. So I think he's got a lot of potential. I mean, it's hard for me to argue that the Cardinals, you put them in their old division, the NFC East, they win the division. No argument.
Yeah, they win that division, and I think they're a playoff team if they play in the North.
But their quarterback is Carson Palmer.
All right. Listen, Carson Palmer, I'm not going to sit here and say he didn't have some bad years.
He had some terrible years.
He had some bad years.
Yeah.
But he was really good until he got hurt in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And then since then, he's just had nothing to work with.
Right.
So
now we'll get to what he's got around him. He's got Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd as his pretty much the 2 wide receivers. There's not much after that. Mm-hmm. They have Andre Ellington, sort of the emerging running back in their system. We'll see how much he splits carries with Jonathan Dwyer.
He was a really quiet fantasy guy last year.
He was.
Because he didn't really, come on as the full running back until maybe 6 or 7 games.
I know Bill Simmons was huge on him all year, so I got an earful of it all the time, as if I'm buds with Bill Simmons. But they run they want to try and run a 2 tight end set with John Carlson and Rob Hausler, 2 tight ends that are great pass catching tight ends. So this is a team that wants to put some heavies out there so they can run with Ellington, but they want to give Carson Palmer those weapons to throw to. Now this is I don't think the combination of Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd is as much of an upside as the pairing in Tampa does. I know you probably completely disagree.
Well, I mean, upside, I disagree. I agree with you upside because Larry Fitzgerald doesn't really have any more upside. Neither of the guys have more upside right now, but they're at their peaks right now. So,
I think this team's really similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's just that they play in 2 different divisions. Except I have more faith in Josh McCown. I almost called him Luke McCown, which would just completely destroyed my argument, and then I just admitted to it. Versus
we can edit that.
Carson Palmer. I don't know. There's so many concerns with me. There's concerns that he can lose games. There's concerns that he's going to throw interceptions. There's concerns that he can get hurt. And then Drew Stanton's their backup, and he doesn't know where the back of the end zone is.
But well, again, we can't really play the injury card unless the guy is always hurt, and I don't think Palmer's always hurt.
Yeah,
But I mean, his second half last year was, I mean, if his first half wasn't so atrocious, his second half was great. And they won something like, I think, like 7 of the last 9 games. Yeah. Once he started playing well. I mean, and that's one of those things. It could have been chance, but it could just be him getting used to the system and him finally having a guy that he can throw to. You know, with Larry Fitzgerald. And Larry Fitzgerald actually having a guy who can throw the ball to him. And, you know, they got Michael Floyd, and, you know, adding Ted Ginn, who, again, he's not a huge...
I think when you're talking about wide receivers, it's the development of Michael Floyd, and if he can reach that next level.
It is. And again, is he gonna make the leap? You know, and that this is the year it's got to be done, and if he does, that could be huge. You know,
they have a lot of questions on their offensive line still, but they were right on the cusp of being great. They're over under 7.5. I'm gonna say that I think their record flips this year and they go 6-10, as opposed to 10-6.
I'm going over 7.5.
Okay, but how far over?
9.
9. Okay, so you're gonna have a kind of a crowding there for like which teams are gonna make the playoffs, who's gonna get that last playoff spot, because you have a couple teams at 9 and 7. But I have them at 6-10. I have them as the worst team in the NFC West. That's because I have the St. Louis Rams doing a little bit better. And now I know we're just gonna flip the argument here.
I hope you could get the volume on my side that I just did.
You're just screaming.
I don't know. I mean,
so
if we're gonna talk about injuries and, you know, someone who always gets hurt, it's Sam Bradford.
Okay, it is Sam Bradford.
You can pretty much sign him up for 6 games a year.
And I am aware of that. And Sam Bradford's a huge question. He could come out and just play terrible. I'm aware of this. He hasn't shown himself to be worthy of that number 1 pick yet. He's also had a lot of different offensive coordinators. He doesn't have the best offensive coordinator right now. His offensive coordinator is Brian Schottenheimer, who was formerly the offensive coordinator for the Jets. So look at Mark Sanchez. Didn't really work out there either. They have... This was my base. Their backup, first of all, at quarterback is Sean Hill, too. So if anything happens with Bradford, at least that's a little bit better than Kellen Clemens.
Yeah.
So my theory before was you build a team from the inside out. There is no team that has...
They got great offense and defensive line.
Phenomenal.
I will give you that.
Right. You have Jake Long, Greg Robinson, Scott Wells, Roger Saffold, and Joe Barksdale on the offensive line. One of the best offensive lines in the league. And a great pass-blocking offensive line as well, which I think is what you want your offensive line to be, as opposed to maybe the Cowboys. They have a better run-blocking offensive line. There's some questions at wide receiver, but it's a lot of guys.
Just try and brush that comment on. There's
questions. I'm going to take it on.
I could play wide receiver for the Rams.
Okay, so right now on their depth chart, Chris Givens and Austin Pettis are listed first. They also have Brian Quick, Tavon Austin, Kenny Britt, Stedman Bailey. They have a lot of those B or C level guys. Now, I know when you gather guys like that, you don't always have someone that comes out and plays great. Patriots were the case in point last year.
I mean, they had Tom Brady throwing the ball.
Right. No, but there was still no one that really emerged from that group as like being awesome. I mean, Edelman was basically playing Welker's role, but no one thinks that Edelman was nearly as good as Wes Welker was when he was in his prime.
Well, yeah, but I mean, let Edelman get to his prime.
But these are young guys. So they also, admittedly, they add Jared Cook this year. They overpay for him. And they have Lance Kendricks as their other tight end. So hopefully Jared Cook can make an impact. But I think 1 or 2 of these wide receivers, like someone's going to pick them up in fantasy sports too, and they're just going to love it. Like I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Pettis out of Baylor, Tavon Austin, West Virginia. You get Chris Givens and Brian Quick I mean, one or two of these guys, and then Kenny Britt, who never did anything in Tennessee. He was dealing with injuries, but he's a bit.
No.
He was a first round.
He was
pick.
not fully dealing with injuries. He was dealing with injuries to an extent.
Yeah.
But then he just wasn't performing.
Right.
He just would not show up to the ballpark.
I just think that someone's going to emerge from that group as being decent. And then running back, it's a very similar story. I mean, you got Zach Stacy and Trey Mason.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a decent running back duo right now. I think that's going to get the job done.
I mean, again, it's always tough when a young guy like Stacy has a good year, and it's tough to see if they can repeat it. But even if he is as good as last year, I just don't think there's enough around him. Like, I'm sure, having a great offensive line is awesome, but what does it matter if they're just blocking for nobody?
I don't know. I think if you have a great offensive line, that's just going to give you, it's going to hide so much else. It's going to make your quarterback look a little bit more efficient. It's going to make your running game. It's going to make your
receivers run better routes and catch balls.
At this point, when I watch a team run the football on TV, I don't even watch the running back anymore. I watch the offensive line and defensive line and see who gets the push up front.
Right.
Because I know when I'm always watching the Patriots, I always see the push from the defensive line.
You got to ask for a different camera angle.
Yeah. No. Well, you kind of get the general idea of it when you're watching a game. Now, their defense, it's the exact same story as their offense. It's really good inside. Further you get out, more problems.
Worse and worse.
Yes. Their defensive line is insanely good.
It's unreal, yeah. Don't get me wrong. On both sides of the ball, on the line, they're great.
Mm-hmm. Chris Long, Kendall Langford, Michael Brockers, and Robert Quinn are your starters, but you got the young Aaron Donald, who's been a standout so far. Mm-hmm. Also, as a backup there to rotate in, you got Ernie Sims, who was a linebacker converted to that.
Yeah. Michael Sam, a great chemistry guy.
Okay. I'm just gonna skip that, and then I don't. First, I'll just say I don't think Michael Sam's gonna make the team, and I think it's gonna suck.
You don't think so?
I think it's just too much. I mean, he had a pretty good game last night. They got a lot of depth
there. Yeah, I did see some.
He got 2 tackles and a sack, and that's what you got to do. I just have this feeling of dread that he's not going to make the team. But I will say this: I think it's been a great progression for gay rights in sports. Just the fact that it hasn't been a big deal.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm not watching, Fox News or anything. I mean, they're probably making a fuss about it, but in everything else, any sports network really hasn't been a big deal, except for the fact that it's been out there. They've been like, oh, what's going on with Michael Sam? But no one in the NFL cares.
Yeah, no one does.
So their linebackers, a few more problems. James Lerner is probably one of the most overpaid middle linebackers, but he's decent.
Mm-hmm. He's decent, but
Jolon Dunbar, really bulky guy, big, strong, good run stopper, and probably not the best coverage guy. Alec Ogletree. There's issues there.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. And then you get into the secondary.
They
lose Cortland Finnegan. They don't.
I like Janoris Jenkins, but nobody else. There.
But he's still been disappointing. I mean, a lot of people thought he had such a higher ceiling. I mean, they seemed. I didn't understand why they kept addressing the defensive line, because it was like, you guys got that. You got it under control.
Right, just the way you're talking now, how can you say this team is?
Because I am so strong on the idea that if you have the best offensive line and the best defensive line, you put yourself in a good position. I'm not saying that they're going to make the playoffs.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I think it's going to be really close.
I think
they win 9 games.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the lines aren't important, but this year, I think there are a few more skilled player acquisitions away from being relevant.
Well, I think it's going to really come down to this year is how well Sam Bradford plays. And this is another team that either Sam Bradford's going to be good and he's their quarterback of the future and he's going to demonstrate it, or they might as well finish at the bottom of the division again because they need to
let him go.
I mean, this is going to be a quarterback-heavy draft coming into next year. This year was a lot of people thought it was a lighter draft. He didn't have any standouts. He didn't have Blake Bortles was picked first. He was picked third. He's the first quarterback to go off the board.
First quarterback, yeah.
And then Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater. But that was your first 33 picks right there. Only 3 quarterbacks came out, and one of them was a high variance guy. Mm-hmm. And Teddy Bridgewater is pretty much a low ceiling guy. This next year, you got Marcus Mariota coming out. You got Bryce Petty. You have a lot of
maybe
guys
what's his face from
Winston?
Florida State, Jameis Winston.
Yeah, famous Jameis Winston. I think he stays, but
yeah, I mean he's expressed that he kind of wants to stay, but you never know when there's a guy that caliber.
I mean, if you put Russell Wilson, I'm not even saying. I don't know where you stand on this. I think in between the three young quarterbacks there, Kaepernick, Wilson, and Luck, that Wilson's the third best out of them.
I mean, as far as like straight up just skill, yeah.
Right. So he's more of a game manager. He's got plenty of ability. Game manager, more of a leader.
Right.
If you put him on the Rams, I think you have a team that wins 12 games this year.
I think that sounds ridiculous.
Okay, so wait. 7.5 was their over under. You have them under?
Under, yeah.
Yeah? How far?
Yeah. 5.
5. Okay, so you just no hope for that.
I'm just nah, dog.
So basically, my playoffs end up looking like the Eagles win the East, Packers win the North.
Yep.
Buccaneers win the South.
How hard was that to say?
That's I just when I'm confident about it. When I say it, I know you're gonna giggle. So
yeah,
my giggle came up prematurely, and the 49ers win the West, and then I have my two playoff teams, two wildcard teams, as the Seattle Seahawks and the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I guess I got Philly, Green Bay, but then I got New Orleans in the South, San Fran in the West, and then Seattle and Atlanta. Looks like as my wild cards.
So, I guess the way we wrapped it up with the AFC, we had our championship game, the Broncos and the Patriots. Who do you see being in the NFC Championship game?
My guess is going to be San Fran, New Orleans.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to say, I think the Buccaneers are going to be there or something, but I'm going to...
Are you sure?
You
want to say it.
To be the devil's advocate a little bit, I'm going to say the Packers and the Seahawks.
All right. I mean, again, with these teams, any given Sunday, any of them can beat anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to say, change things up a little bit. I'm not going to pick the Seahawks Patriots in the Super Bowl. I'll pick the Packers against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. That's also a Super Bowl I would love to see.
And I'm going to go Niners.
Finally getting over that hump.
Yeah.
This is a team that almost traded their coach last year. Just one of the, I feel it's been so overlooked as a story. Probably not in the Bay Area.
And then in the, on the DVDs when they're looking back, it'll just be like, started from adversity. They almost traded him, and then he led them on this runner,
It sounds like you're already making the narrative that the 49ers beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
No, I'm not going to go that far.
Okay. Well, I still don't want to pick the Patriots as the Super Bowl champions. I just don't want to jinx them, so I guess I'm picking the Packers as a default. This kind of came out of nowhere. I just kind of picked them on a whim there now.
I think there's going to be a tie.
Tie in the Super Bowl.
And
Bud
it'll
be
like 18 overtimes. Or not 18 overtimes, and everyone's just going to be so exhausted they can't play anymore, they're just going to have to call it.
Then basically what they just do at the end, they say, we can't do this, and Vince McMahon comes out and says, just put a ball in the middle and have them fight over it, and whoever gets it wins.
Yeah.
XFL style. And He Hate Me comes out. And
He Hate Me just runs out of the stands. He's been waiting for this
He's just waiting all this time. Crowd jumps on the field. Sorry, maybe I'm a little too excited for SummerSlam coming up in a few hours.
Yeah.
Or not even a few hours.
A half
coming
hour.
Up within the half hour. But I mean, so it should be a great NFL season. We'll be talking about the NFL more regularly as the season progresses. But we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for being on the podcast, Phil. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's always fun time being on.
You had plenty of a little bit of humor there too. Sure, you're getting more laughs than I'm getting. But GYP Sports, we want to tell you can listen to the podcast on the website. You can download us on iTunes. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Like the Facebook page. Just search GYP Sports. You're going to find us. And you can check out our new YouTube page. Just search GYP Sports. You'll find us there. You'll be able to listen to all of our podcasts. And also, we actually just put up the video where you nominated me for the Ice Bucket Challenge, and I did that. So
yeah, you did it, and you passed with flying colors.
I think I had good form too.
It's all about form.
I took all the water. I
and,
really did. Of course, the Ice Bucket Challenge is for awareness of ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. We invite people to go onto the website. It's been a great cause to donate to the website, even if you can just donate $5, $10, whatever you can donate for ALS. There's plenty of issues out there. There's plenty of things that you can donate to. There's plenty of good causes, but the momentum that this thing has gotten, very important to, I think, continue to push that. And GYP Sports is definitely a proud supporter of that. And, you're the one who nominated me, Phil, so thanks for that. That's going to wrap it up for this GYP Sports podcast. It's been a long one. Hope you enjoyed it. And we're out. GYP.